Hello, CIS family. All right, y'all can do better than that. Hello, CIS family. Hello, everyone. It is so great to see all of you. Well, I can barely see you because the lights are beaming, but for those of you that I have not had an opportunity to meet, my name is Anya Harrington, the Vice President of Marketing and Communications, and I'm just so happy to stand before you tonight for this momentous celebration of this iconic book, The Last Dropout, by our very own founder, Bill Milliken. So let's get excited about that. So before we get started, I just want to give you just a quick introduction for those of you who are not familiar. Originally published in 2007, the revised and updated edition of the book offers the 9 key principles that Communities in Schools has tested over 3 decades. We've been around for a while now, y'all. This new edition, subtitled The Model for Educational Equity, includes a conversation with Bill and our current president and CEO, Rey. And as many of you might be familiar with Rey's story, he was encouraged by his own CIS site coordinator in San Antonio to go to Stanford University, where he earned his master's degree in education. The book also, that's to be celebrated. The book also tells the dramatic life stories of Bill Milliken and his colleagues, stories that began in the turbulent 1960s, where youth workers, as part of their mission, their spiritual mission, to turn around the lives of dropouts and addicts. The book also traces the evolution of the CIS movement from a handful of groundbreaking street academies to what we know today as our national network of affiliates across the country. So without further ado, I know you're enjoying your drinks. Let's get this conversation started. Please join me in welcoming the author and our beloved founder of Communities in Schools, Bill Milliken, and the president and CEO of Communities in Schools, Rey Saldaña. All right. Okay, you can be seated. Okay, so it is such a great joy to be present in the flesh with all of our friends and family here. So just to start us off, I want to know what's going through your mind. How are you feeling? Let's start with you, Bill.
I am feeling so moved by the fact that we're here face to face. I am not into Facebook, but I'm into being in people's faces. and just to be here and to hug and encourage one another, it's beyond feelings.
What about you, Rey?
Well, I say I, but the entire CIS national team has been circling a date on the calendar for a long time about when we can come together as person. We circled it in 2021, didn't happen, circled it in 2022, and here we are for Leadership Town Hall. I am pumped to get to see everyone who is here from all across the network, and it almost feels like, Bill, like sometimes we think about the good old days, and the good old days are like, when were the good old days? I feel like the good old days are happening right in front of us, so I'm excited.
So these are definitely some great days indeed. We started the year pretty off with a fast start, Rey. So we're just going to keep that momentum started and hop right into this discussion. So Bill, starting with you, it's been 15 years since you wrote the first version of The Last Dropout. And I believe we have a picture of the old version of it. Oh, yep, there it is. And so clearly it's gone through a little bit of a facelift.
So have I.
But there were some interesting things that you've layered into the book. And so share with the audience tonight, what prompted you to work on this revised edition of The Last Dropout?
Well, kind of serendipitous. We have a great friend and big supporter from Silicon Valley that as the pandemic was easing up and you were allowed to at least eat outside, he said, hey, I played football with him at Wisconsin. He's an entrepreneur. I've always wanted to introduce him. He's going to be in Washington. Could you and your wife, Jean, have dinner with him? And we did, and he was bigger than life. And he said, have you ever written any books? I said, yeah, I've read 4 and I've written 4. And he said, did you write any on communities and schools? I said, yeah, about 14, 15 years ago. And he said, send me a copy. And you know, these muckety mucks, they say send you books. It's probably sitting over on the side. 2 days later, I get a call. He said, I have underlined this. I put tabs. He said, this book was ahead of its time. You need to get it republished. And I really, really didn't want to do it. I said, I don't want to have to read a 5th book and then have to write it. And so I thought, well, here's the test. I'll call the publisher, and he probably won't call me back. I haven't talked to him in years. Within 48 hours, he called, said, this is urgent. You're way bigger than you were. It's needed more. That guy's right on. Gave 2 full-time editors. I brought John Moores back in, who helped as part of the CIS family forever. And they got it on record time. It was supposed to come out next year, but they got it here in time for Town Hall.
That's awesome. And we are glad to turn the pages of the book. I know folks are anxious to check it out.
Buy it for everybody. Everybody.
It's strategically, we made this was a happy hour, and so hopefully
Yes,
buy
yes.
books by the end of this.
You could order a box today.
Yeah, it's all a part of Bill's perfect plan. Ray, the next question is for you. You are a CIS alumnus who have gone from a student supported by CIS to the national leader of communities and schools. You weren't a part of all of the years since Bill founded this organization in 1970s, but you do have a great first-hand experience or perspective about the history of CIS. So from your perspective, what are some things that you have witnessed, important changes you've seen, and what do you think still is the same?
Well, I'll answer that question by kind of walking through something that Bill and I got to experience, or that I really got to experience of Bill just last month. So we went on a little bit of a road trip / train trip, and I spent a lot of time with Bill Milliken. And Bill is just kind of this wonderful, you try to absorb everything you can when you're with them. A lot of them are stories, a lot of them are examples of places that he has been and things he has seen. But if we had to compare, especially what the book essentially walks the reader through is the history of the organization, I almost got a glimpse of Bill with darker hair, probably walking a little faster and still telling the same good old stories 20, 30 years ago, because what we were doing is essentially we were traveling, talking to some superintendents and policymakers who were interested in seeing the expansion of CIS. And as the book kind of works through it and talks about how we have changed in some ways, it has been that I can picture in our mind's eye what Bill was like traveling to community after community, almost like Johnny Appleseed, spreading seeds all across the country of the work of CIS. Some of those seeds, of course, have grown into the tables we see here. I see Nevada and Houston and Pennsylvania out here. So what you see in the pages of the book is essentially how Bill, as I think you call yourself the pioneer, kind of going out trailblazing, but this kind of transition where we had to become more of settlers and really kind of define the work, create a model, ensure that what happens in Columbus, Ohio is not totally different from what happens in Atlanta or in Houston or in LA. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing that I get to take in as the leader now is all of that history and a little bit of some new stuff that Bill will pepper me with when we check in every week. So it's wonderful to see it on pages, wonderful to get to talk about it up here, but that's just this amazing story of the last 4.5 decades that we've gotten to put this work together. And Bill, we got to do that road trip, and Jean, God bless you. You put up with Bill Milliken more often than I do.
That's awesome. That's right. Let's give a hand clap for Jean.
She's out here. But what a true gift that Bill continues to give to us, and this book, most recent book, is just another great gift that he's given us.
A gift indeed, and for those of you who've had the wonderful pleasure of being in Bill's presence, you know that he loves telling stories. And so I want to share one with you. In the book, there's this wonderful story you tell where you were in Philadelphia attending the President's Summit for America's Future. And all of the dignitaries, I mean, there were so many people there, current presidents, former first ladies, business leaders, and so many more. When it was your turn to speak, you described the feeling of being overwhelmed. But you found your voice, and you said something that, in my mind, I feel is very profound. You said that we don't have a youth problem in America. We have an adult problem in America. Can you tell us what you meant by that?
Well, I have to give you the context because there's a book coming out about the Forrest Gump of the North, and it's about myself. I end up in these frickin' situations. But we had a person during the Clinton administration, and that administration was extremely good to CIS. And one of my board members at that time, CIS he's bringing us into Newark pretty soon, New Jersey. He said, I want to have a summit with all the living presidents and Mrs. Reagan and General Powell's in between jobs. Mm-hmm. So I'll get him to be the chair. And he said, I want you to organize, too, the grassroots part of it, because we're going to have all these mayors, governors, but we need some grassroots, and as well as the faith community. So I took it on because he said if I didn't, he'd quit giving me money. So I thought but it was to raise the consciousness of the growing divide between have and have-nots. What really happened was we were working behind the scenes. Nobody slept for at least 3 days. And I get a thing on my phone. They actually had phones that rang. And, Bill, we need your help. So-and-so got sick, and it's the final. You know how to talk without writing a speech. Just, we need you up there in a few hours. And to be honest, I was scared to death and prayed a lot because I said, I'm over my head here. Fortunately for me, there was 3 speakers at the end, and one was a governor, one was a mayor, and then I was the cleanup. And so, again, God's so good to me. Those 2 were so boring, I could have I could have belched and got a standing ovation. So I got up there, and I literally, for the first time in my life, I run my mouth a lot, and I couldn't talk. I felt inferior. For one, my old learning issues came back, that you're an imposter, you shouldn't be up here, blah, blah, blah. But what hit me is what came to me. I said, here, I've been all these years trying to live out my faith, trying to live out loving the kids into change, all this. And now, here's the greatest audience I could ever, and I've been talking about youth, and the issue is we have an adult problem, not a kid's problem. And the place did go silent, and then there was this unbelievable standing ovation. That's all I just basically said. You can't give away what you don't have. If we are a community, we can't expect our kids to be community. We can't tell them one set of values and not live them out. And so that's kind of it. That I do want to, I would say St. Francis is somebody I really care about, because he said, I talk about God every day, but sometimes I even use words. And so if we aren't an example of change, you aren't going to have it.
That's right. Ray, you make it clear that you see a strong connection between the work that CIS does in schools and advancing social justice. You say in the book that the work of CIS that we do in school has a role to play in the fight for social justice. And we're not afraid to own that. Share a little more.
Well, again, this is breathing into what we do today based on the spirit of what Bill, Neil Shorthouse, Dave Lewis, where this was born. And I don't think I'm saying anything out of turn when I say that we were born as an organization fighting and looking for justice. And this was in the midst of the 60s, if you sort of read through the book and you talk about, and you walk through the history of what was happening in the late 60s, and Bill and his team working through street academies and building out what was, essentially the pathway of hope. And if I do anything when I'm with Bill, it's oftentimes I scribble down notes and write down some of his phrases. And one of the phrases that I like to kind of think about when I think about our role in educational equity and justice is what Bill said about hope. He said, when a student doesn't have hope, they'll do one of two things. They'll either hurt themselves or they'll hurt others. And it was kind of in the midst of a lot of what was happening, especially as I came in March of 2020, that I started reading a lot more of the history of CIS and really diving into the Last Dropout, a few other pieces that we had written over the last decade, to find out that we have been talking about justice for a long time. And in the summer of 2020, everyone was talking about equity, everyone was talking about inclusion. And I think the fear for us as an organization that is the largest youth-serving, one of the largest youth-serving nonprofits in the country, is to be afraid to talk about what the real issues and the real root cause of the purpose why our students are struggling the most. We see it in statistics. If you look at dropouts, we see it in statistics. If you look at homelessness, foster care, and poverty. So what we as an organization are really trying to crystallize is that we hold a really strong position of authority because we're inside schools, because we're working with students, and because we are consistent since the 60s about our role to really be voices and advocates for our young people and not just navigate them around the potholes or the barriers so that they know how to climb over them, but to really talk about the question of why those barriers exist to begin with. And so as I think about our role as an organization that is pushing towards our values, towards justice, it's important for us to recognize the lane that we have inside education. And Bill, you could tell us more about this, but another sort of story that you told me is about being in a room with people like Congressman Lewis. And when they were advocating and fighting in the streets for equity and for justice, he would comment to you that your role is inside schools. That's where the real work is happening. Sometimes we talk about policies that we want change, and when we change those policies, they may have an impact 2 or 3 years down the road. As a former elected official, I know that that's true. We talk so much about it, but some people, like you all in the room, are doing it every single day, and you have an authority. And it's a quote that I quote often that my staff hears, which is Alice Walker's, sometimes the most common way we give away our powers by thinking that we don't have any. And our site coordinators have power, our executive directors have power because they're working in these communities, not as outsiders, but as insiders. And the ability to really raise your voice about the issues and the barriers that your students are facing is the role that we have to play as we think about justice and equity issues. And I think our biggest enemy, especially with the way we felt things in the summer of 2020, our biggest enemy will be a short-term memory.
Yep.
If we said that mattered to us in 2020, that was not, it's 2 years removed, we're moving on. That's still at the core of what we do, and it's always been consistently at the core of who we are.
I absolutely agree. That was such a salient point, Ray. And, I being with communities and schools for close to 8 years now, I've certainly seen the shift in us growing that muscle and becoming a lot more comfortable and speaking out around, our social equity work and making sure that there is not separation of church and state between, social justice and education. They are one and the same. And so thank you for that. Bill, the book offers, a lot of important points about our history, but one of the things that you mentioned is about our 5 basics. So for the folks in the room that are not familiar, Can you share what the 5 basics are, and why are they still true and important to the work? And then, Ray, you can help them out, because I know I have to.
You don't need to
keep
help.
track.
That's all right.
Yeah.
The most important thing, and I've been saying this more in recent years, that you were talking about Congressman Lewis. CIS was born out of the civil rights of Atlanta at that time and the civil rights of the streets of New York, so it was kind of a great combination. But I said, gee, we really want to be sure that we're about equity and about justice. He said, you stay in your lane. You got to keep those kids in school, because emancipation without an education, you see where that gets us. So we're all in this together. And I think that's important, that's the rule. And so the 5 basics are really justice issues. And some of you have heard me say that before, that the fact that not every child has an adult that cares about them. There's thousands of kids out there that don't have one adult in their life that gives a damn they exist. And being in the hills of West Virginia or on the streets of Chicago, there are kids, and that's a justice issue. If some kids have a relationship with a caring adult that's totally sold out on them making it, and other kids don't, it's just loving your neighbor. That's a safe place. If I have a safe place behind the fence and you're outside the fence, that's a justice issue. So a safe, caring environment that we're trying to create in these schools, that's a justice issue. And it's not enough to say you love a kid in your relationship and you give them a safe place, but if they don't have a skill at the end, and the only thing they can do is sell drugs, that's a justice issue. They need to have a marketable skill. The fact that some people live in a healthy environment and others don't in a healthy, or have healthy foods and others doesn't, that's a justice issue. And the chance to give back, and I know we may go over time, but this is probably one of the most important things I ever heard. I don't know if I wrote it in the book because I haven't read it yet.
He's read the book. He wrote the book.
I heard the audio version.
Which he recorded.
Which he recorded, so technically you read the book.
I'll make this short, but if you don't hear anything beside 2 things tonight, I'll say it, and that's what I want on my gravestone. It's relationship, not programs that change people. The other is, the greatest gift you can give somebody is to receive their gift. So I was asked, I got tired of hearings, because when you have the privilege of being part of 3 different administrations, you have to go before these little groupies called hearings. And I said they call them hearings because nobody's listening. And so if you go with a bad attitude, the calmer you'll get it back. So I went just because of who asked me to go. I went, and I didn't want to go. You get 3 minutes to answer these stupid questions, some good questions. But I just wanted out, and he was not the nicest human being that I've ever been quizzed by. And all I wanted to do was get out there. He said, hold, I have one more question. And I said, what's that? He said, what's the difference in the kids that you've seen make it over all these years and the ones that didn't? And I had a kind of a tough upbringing. I almost lost it. My whole spiritual thing almost went down the toilet. I was ready to go across the table and take this guy out, because it hit me so hard. I was in so much pain, because I had lived with the fact that I had spoken at 12 funerals for kids who lived with me from the streets in the 60s. And I always felt bad that somehow I didn't get to them, and I found them bleeding out in the apartment, or they got shot in front of our tenement or whatever. And so I went right to that negative spot, and I got tongue-tied, and you only got 3 minutes, and I wasted 60 minutes, and then it just came to me. It was like a spiritual thing. I said, the kids that made it are the ones we allowed to make it. And they said, what do you mean? I said, I always thought help was helpful, but help is not always helpful. You can keep people in slavery through your help if you think you're better than that person. And we need to be there, that we're all broken people. Some of us got born in a different zip code than others. As Warren Buffett's son that I got a chance to meet with wrote a book, said, everybody's born into somebody else's story. Don't judge it. But we can help them change their story. And I said, every young person needs a chance to give. And I said, one of the biggest reasons I fight so hard for the arts, even though I can't paint a picture, is that sometimes that's the gift that they give us through a camera, through a piece of art or whatever, and we affirm them. It's looking for their gift. It's looking through the hatred, the hostility, the anger, the hurt, the inferiority, and finding out that nugget in them, and then receiving their gift, and then they become part of the change in the democracy. If you don't learn anything more than that, that's when we create these environments, we want to make sure everybody's part of the kids, the teachers are all part of that orchestra that's being entrained.
So gentlemen, let's do something a little different.
I couldn't hear you.
We are going to...
Getting old.
I'm going to turn this way.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Bill, for talking a little bit about the 5 basics. So indulge me in a quick, I'm going to go off script a little bit, in a quick little exercise. I'm going to read 5 short statements that I want you to complete, okay?
Short.
Okay, you can do that?
You okay with that, Bill?
Short.
And as your media trainer, Ray, I'm gonna ask that you keep these responses like really sharp.
You're telling me? You're telling me? You know who's on your right hand side.
Emphasize, right. And so this is your night, Bill. I'm gonna start with you. Education is.
Education is the game changer. We're going to win or lose the future of America at the schoolhouse door.
Okay. You ready?
I don't know why this feels like a competition now. Is it like a clap thing? I'm not going to compete with you, Bill.
Let's see if you can match that. No pressure.
No, I'm not.
The power of in means.
The power of in. The power of in. The power of in means we go further together than we can alone.
Okay.
Woo!
Okay, snaps. Snaps. All right, Bill. In 50 years, CIS will be
in every school with a site coordinator in America.
all right. Let's do that.
I was going to say easy for you to say, but this team is the team who's got to put that all together.
I love this so much. Okay, Ray.
It's a good thing we can't see them.
It's a good thing you retired, Bill.
I hope education policymakers understand that CIS.
I hope education policymakers understand that CIS is no longer a nice to have, but a must have.
Woo!
Yeah. There we go.
And Bill, last question for you. I want my legacy to be.
I never gave up on a child, and I never quit the mission, and I'm going out with my boots on.
All right.
When can we drink?
We're getting to it. We are getting there. That was awesome.
That was fun.
I think it is safe to say that we are in a room full of people who are strong supporters of the things you've both talked about today. They believe in a better, more equitable system of education that works for all students. And they are working every day against extraordinary challenges and environments behind one purpose, one common goal. Is there anything else as we close out that you would like to leave with the audience tonight? I'll start with you first, Rey.
Yeah, let me do this again. Let me pull from the pages of wisdom from the leadership and the history of CIS. We have a board chair. Her name is Elaine Wynn. I think many people in the room know who Elaine Wynn is. I once asked her, as the head of a large casino resort, do you think it's better to be lucky or good? and she said, you're asking the wrong question, because there is only one answer to that question, which is you have to be both. And she said, believe me, I know a lot of people who think they're really good, and they start to walk into places we build, and all of a sudden we end up being the ones who get really lucky all the time. But it made me think of something else that one of our first national board chairs, his name was Bob Baldwin. He was the head of Morgan Stanley. He led CIS from mid-'80s to about the early '90s. And he had an embroidered pillow in his office. At least this is how I read it. Bill, you probably have seen it. It said, the harder I work, the luckier I get. And I think that as we are considering what's in front of us, we're at 45 years of our history. We're going to get to 50 years. I think about one piece of advice my mom and dad give me every time I leave the house, which is, échale ganas. I actually, Poonam, who actually was wondering what the one phrase is that I hold on to the most, it's a phrase in Spanish that says échale ganas. It's about persistence. It's about not necessarily knowing where the edge of the cliff is going to take you, but you jump knowing that faith is going to get you to the other side. I think 50 years into this work, we can recognize we have a future that we're not going to be necessarily all of us individually a part of. And I know that Bill has talked about this relay, handing it off to Dan Cardinale and Dale Urquiaga, and then I get the stewardship of leading at this time. But you all, as executive directors, as site coordinators, as staff, you're part of a bigger movement. And the best thing I can say is, again, the harder we work, the luckier we get. But at the end of the day, all we can say is, échale ganas. We don't know where exactly we're going, but we know we're on the way there. So that's my only piece of advice. I think my mother and father tell me all the time.
Awesome.
What's the question?
Final words. A piece of advice.
This will only take a half hour.
Okay.
Two things. After the 60s, I grew up very macho, and you didn't share your feelings. All those kids that I spoke at their funeral, I held it inside. And it almost destroyed me, the violence I saw growing up, and then the violence of those 11 years on the streets. And my wife saved my life when she got me to go in to therapy and found out I had PTSD and all that. That's one of my degrees. The other's ADD and ADHD, so those are my graduate work. But I realized I didn't take care of the inside, and you can't give away what you don't have. And she has spent her life trying to get me to have a balance. And what keeps me up at night now is I'm older, and I've seen what all you've gone through, you heroes out there, that the pandemic didn't stop us from loving kids or serving them. But you pay a price if you don't deal with your inward journey. And to be there and to do the little meditation that was up here today, just the simple things. And we need to be there for each other. If we don't care about each other, we can't ask the world out there to care. It starts with us. We're all wounded. We all have nobody in this room has it made. We put on all these fronts often, but we're the same broken people that need each other. And so I think it's important as we're out there serving the kids and serving the schools that we do our work, individual work, but also collectively in each of the communities that you're loving one another and helping one another, forgiving one another, because that way we aren't only individual witnesses in the world, but collective wisdom and collective community that's given given back to that. So the last is, this has been a rough 6 weeks, and some of the greatest things, but you've heard about the 100-year plan. The guy that got Vinny and I to move to Harlem died last week. The week before, I went to the funeral of one of our biggest supporters who's been with us since 1962. The week before was the guy that, when I first went to camp, that helped turn my life around. They've all died in the last, and nobody's getting out of this alive, I know that, and we'll be there. But it's just reminded me that we're only here for a short part of the journey, and to love each other and to love our neighbor is the greatest calling. And I just encourage you to work on your in and outward journeys.
Amen.
Thank you. Well said.
Are we free?
Almost. Almost. Well, I think that is a good place to stop. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Bill is ready to get to the refreshments. Okay.
Praise the Lord.
So I do have an announcement to make. We are thrilled to have everyone be with us this evening. And so let me have my Oprah moment. Guess what? Everyone here is going to get a free copy of the book. You get a book, you get a book. Okay, I wanted to do that. You know, I practiced that.
Donations are welcome. No, it all goes to CIS anyhow.
That's right. So there are going to be pre-signed copies of the book in the back of the room. And for those of you who will have to jump out, there are grab-and-go books in the foyer. So here's the moment we've been waiting for. Let's stand up and give Bill another round of applause for Last Dropout. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well done.
You good? Y'all can have a moment? Okay. Oh, we're gonna pause for a second.
Oh.
All right. All right, thank you. Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. Enjoy the rest of the evening.